Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm joined here today with Joe King. Joe King is a community manager. Well, not just a community manager. You're a community and social media manager with like 10 years, a lot of experience in the industry. I'm really happy to have you on. How are you doing today?
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. Hey, I'm happy to be here, Connor. Thanks a lot for
Yeah,
the invite. I've been looking forward to it, so I'm excited to chat.
cool. I'm super excited to have you on. Uh, Sorry, man. I had a
No, you're
long day.
good.
No, so
I'm with you.
I'm super
I
excited to
mean,
have.
we just got done talking about, you asked me how my morning's going, and I listed out about 30 just insane things that have happened already,
Yeah.
and I think it's 12:30 here, so yeah, it's been a day already.
1:30 here, and it's just like been
Yeah.
running constantly. But I'm excited to have you on. You know, I really like talking to community people and social media people, and you'll be the second kind of person dedicated to that stuff that I have on here. So I'm really excited about our conversation, and I'm gonna jump into the first question if that's
Yeah.
okay with you.
Same here. Yeah, let's
Awesome.
go for it. I'm ready.
So, before entering the video game industry, you worked in, various roles, kind of in music, with one of those being a community manager for, I believe, a site, Gear Trap. What made you, or yeah, Gear Trap, I got it here. What made you decide that you wanted to enter the gaming industry, kind of stuff, kind of from music to gaming, or just deciding like this is where I want to go?
Yeah, so in 2013, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, which that sort of explains the music background right there,
Yeah.
right? I think I always say I think there's a Tennessee state law that if you live within the Nashville city limits, you have to be in a band at some point. Like you have like for some period of time. So being a lot of law-abiding citizen that I am, I made sure to do that. And so yeah, I had a pretty heavy music background. Gear Trap was just sort of a blog that I actually created with a friend, and that was sort of my first foray into sort of what we would now call content creation. Back then, just a lot of writing, basically like blogs, music gear reviews and things like that. And so at one point in 2013, I find myself working at a percussion warehouse there in town, and just not really sure what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I saw where Gearbox posted on Facebook that they were hiring a community manager, and so I thought, oh hey, I could figure out how to do that. Famous last words. and but I knew that with my music or my background in music and promoting the bands and the blog and the things that I was doing, I sort of had this innate, you know, knowledge that I will truly be able to figure this out. Um, so anyway, I decided that I was going to do that, and I went home that night and I sort of updated my resume, my vanilla Word doc resume, and I sent it to my brother-in-law, who's actually also in the industry, and he's been in the industry for a long, long time, and sent it to him and just said, "Hey, will you look this over for me? I'm thinking like typos and syntax and all this kind of stuff." And he said, "Yeah, sure." And so he looked it over, and the next day he sent me an email that was just really long. Like there was a lot of feedback. And the gist of it was essentially, hey, you've never done anything like this before. You don't have any experience here, true experience, and this is a long shot for you. So rather than send them a boring vanilla Word doc that they're just going to throw in the trash, um, you got to find some way to stand out. And so what I did was I went to the craft store and I bought like a wooden box and all the paints and things, and I basically painted this. I can show you here before we get off the call, but basically built out this treasure chest from Borderlands, like a loot chest from Borderlands. And so when you open it, my resume is in there, and I redid it in Photoshop with blood splatter and Borderlands branding, just really trying to show them my enthusiasm for the game and that I was a huge fan and that I was creative. And so anyway, long story short, I sent that to them and they really liked it, and so that got me a call with the HR director, and um, that went well. And that got me a call with the marketing team. And then suddenly they're wanting to fly me down to Dallas to interview in person, which was just crazy. I was like, this is insane. I have totally scanned these people. And yeah,
You said
and
scam?
yeah, I've totally scanned them. Like they just have no idea. But in all seriousnness, it was great. And so I flew down here and I, did the interview, and it was cool. And then in the end I did not get that role, but I heard from the head of publishing later, and he said, hey, look, I know you didn't get this role, but we liked you a lot, and so I was wondering if you would want to be a contractor. We could have you helping out with things on the forums, monitoring community online, all kinds of different stuff. And that would be a great way, for you to actually learn the role and get the real experience that you'll need in the industry. And so of course I jumped at the chance and said, yeah, absolutely. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And, every time my contract would come due, I'm asking them, any full time, no, keep asking though. They always told me to keep asking. So I did. And then, and then finally one day they called and said, hey, can you fly to Dallas tomorrow? We think we found a way to make this work. And I said, absolutely. And so the next day I was on a plane and came down and kind of went through the interview process again as a formality. But this time, I knew a lot of people. I had made friends at the studio remotely, so and seen the team at events and things. So it was a lot more like seeing old friends again and less like a new job interview, really stressful, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, so one thing led to another, and then in 2016 we actually moved to Texas, from Tennessee to Texas, where we are now in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I worked there out of the studio with Gearbox for about 3 years. Left Gearbox in 2019, went to GameStop, where I was senior social manager there, and I just focused on social there. And then in 2022 went to Tencent, where I was a senior community manager, mainly working on sort of, high level strategy and things like that. And then I helped lead a team that would basically execute that strategy day to day. So it's been a very fun, very eventful career so far. And, I feel really fortunate that I was able to sort of find my way into it, I guess, for lack of a better word, being that I didn't have any experience at the beginning, and it was just sort of finding ways to create that experience. And, I started my first podcast around that time to just sort of start practicing community building and content creation and things like that. And that was really valuable. So, that's kind of the origin story right there.
Well, you answered like 10, not 10 of my questions, but like you answered a lot from multiple
Well,
of my questions.
too
Um,
detailed.
no, it's awesome. I love hearing about it. But going all the way back to the beginning, like you mentioned that Gear Trap, you and a friend had started that, and you were a content editor and a community manager, and I remember reading that you on your LinkedIn page that you'd already been like a fan of stuff like Borderlands and stuff. So how did this experience, managing this stuff, making content for Gear Trap with you and your friend, how did that kind of contribute to your desire to enter community management in gaming?
I think the desire probably was innately already there. I think it was sort of a situation where the desire was there, but I didn't really know, because like I said, I wasn't really sure at that point what I wanted to do with my life. Like what career. I kind of felt burnt out with music, and music for me had kind of run its course. And I felt like it was time to try something more, but I've always had like a mind for, being in entertainment and live show production type stuff, of course. And so I guess for some reason, I just loved Borderlands. And then, seeing that Facebook page or that Facebook post, I don't know. Like I said earlier, the best way I can just think of to describe it is I just saw it and then just sort of knew in my bones, like, oh, I can do
Yeah.
that,
It
And
like
so
clicked.
it kind of clicked. And so I guess sort of at that point, that sort of became an option, even though, to be honest with you, I really truly didn't know fully what a community manager does. To me back then, it was sort of like, oh, I would probably go on Major Nelson's podcast and talk about Borderlands, and that would be the job. Like, no, there's more to it than that. But I mean, I was willing to learn, and I think that again, just I had this sort of innate desire to kind of do something like that, and there probably could have been other things that would have popped up that I might have had the same reaction to, but it was sort of this convergence of skills that I feel like I have, a game that I really love, and a company that, based on what I know and the game that they make that I love, I would probably like working at, and it was just sort of a perfect storm of kind of luck and, figuring it out, I guess I would say. That's kind of my motto, is like figure it out, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of one thing I think is an important skill for community managers is the ability to, sort of be put in a situation and be able to ascertain relatively quickly like how you should move forward, like what's the smart thing to do here. And I definitely have that. I definitely have that ability to kind of, pivot pivot from one direction to another, as especially as it relates to communities and people, and being able to say, okay, well, we're trying this thing and this is not working, so what's the backup plan, what's the plan B, what's the plan C, and just trying things until they work.
Yeah. Would you say that when you that like that Facebook post popped up and then you kind of figured out what community management was and what it kind of pertained, were you kind of like dead set like I'm gonna do this once you kind of
Yeah,
figured it
yeah,
all out?
absolutely. i
Yeah.
think uh I think part of me, yeah, I think part of me, it wasn't just about figuring out community management. I think part of me kind of, as I went through that process, um, of course, at the beginning of it, I thought, okay, this is probably not going to happen. But then deep down, I sort of knew, yeah, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen, and I'm going to be really disappointed at the end when it doesn't happen. And then, of course, it worked out in a really funny way that it didn't happen in the way that I thought it would. It would, but it did happen, which was really cool. So I think for me, it was just kind of, um, it really had everything to do with Borderlands. Like I don't think if I had seen another game studio post that, it probably wouldn't have had the same effect. It was just seeing that it was Borderlands, and it was Gearbox, is enough to, I think, just really flip a switch in my head to just really dial me in and sort of say I'm going to make this happen one way or the other. And I don't know how, but I did it. It worked
That, that's,
somehow.
yeah. Well,
I'll take it.
it was your hard work, man. Hard work pays off. You gotta have that, drive or motivation to do that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, exactly.
you mentioned your podcast earlier, and I had a question about the podcast. So, your LinkedIn says that, from December 2013 to January 2016, you and a buddy worked on a podcast, the Video Game Book Club.
Hmm.
And you kind of mentioned that it was a way to break into the game industry. How did running that podcast, kind of help you learn and grow as a community manager and figure out like, hey, these are the things that we do, or these are the things that a community manager needs to do, or these are the way that a community manager can improve, or something like that.
So, so with the podcast, the funny thing was, I was as when I was down in Dallas for the first that very first interview with Gearbox, I was kind of walking through the office and they were sort of showing me the studio, and I walked by. We walked by some break room or something, and there was a flyer on the wall that said "Video Game Book Club this Thursday" or something like that. And I guess I can't remember. It's like a chicken and an egg thing. I can't remember if the title came first or if the idea for the podcast came first. But I think I probably was thinking in my head beforehand, I need to find a way to right now immediately start doing this thing so that when I go talk to them, they know, even if it's only been a week or 2 weeks, like they can see, oh, this guy has the drive to where he's decided he's going to do this thing and now he's doing it. And so I probably had the idea for the podcast in my head, but I wasn't really sure. And then I remember seeing that flyer and thinking, that's what I'm going to call it. And that's what we'll call it. And I had my buddy that I did it with, he, the co-host, he was in radio. So, he had a lot of audio, production and broadcast experience too. So that was great. And so we would just sort of, once a week we would record an episode about whatever game we decided to play or talk about. And it started out sort of being like a book club, like, hey, we'll each play the game and then we'll talk about the game. And then it sort of morphed more into just sort of general video game conversation. But as far as how it helped me, it helped me. The biggest way that I think it helped me was just learning to manage. Again, I did it to build a community around something, to manage, to begin seeing what are the problems I'm experiencing, what are the things that happen on the daily that we're having to deal with, right? One thing that I've always told people for years, they ask me, oh, hey, I want to get into the games industry, but I don't know how to get started. And my advice to them is start doing whatever you want to do right now. Just start doing it. And so that was my way of doing it. So if you're an artist, create art. if you're a programmer, start programming things, build little games that are just really super simple, work your way up. That way, when you do finally get the chance to interview or to start talking to a company about a potential role, there you're showing like, hey, yeah, it's an entry, like I'm entry level, I don't have any experience here, but I am doing this thing already and I know how to do this, you know. And so that was it. That was the idea, was just to start doing it and to create something that it would give me a chance to um, just see every day the kinds of things that I might experience in
Mhm.
gaming.
No, that's great advice. I've heard that a lot, and I definitely think it rings true for like all facets of the industry.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you clarified it. So when I looked into the name, and I looked into the podcast, the Video Game Book Club. It makes sense now that, considering it's called the Video Game Book Club, that you guys would play a game and talk about it like a book club. But I had for some reason thought it was like you guys were reading books, like
Video game.
in like yeah, like
See,
you were
and
reading.
what's
Go
funny
ahead.
about what's funny about that is that the book thing. I'm sure at the time we were kind of like, is this confusing? But it's a good name. Like, okay, we'll go with it. But yeah, even hearing you say it, you know, at the beginning of your question a minute ago, like you had this podcast, Video Game Book Club, and immediately I'm like, that's a terrible name for a podcast. Like, what? Like video game book? Like, what does that even mean? You know? So I don't know, but yeah, it was just kind of like I said, it was just kind of like that's kind of what the moment gave us. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
what the moment presented, and for whatever reason, it just seemed to fit and it just seemed to click. But yeah, now looking back on it, it's really silly, and I'm bad about that too. Like you know, the bands that I was in for years, I would never want to go back and listen to that music. You know, it's always just uncomfortable for me, and I think it gets back to the idea of me not being comfortable with making progress. You know, in something like I'm not comfortable on the journey. It's like I want to get to the end of the journey and already be good at the thing, right? And have
Mhm.
learned, and that's obviously that's not going to happen. That's not the way it goes. And so one thing I'm sort of experimenting with the idea of is doing process content, which is where you're basically going through the process of building something like publicly in front of people, showing, oh, hey, here's what I did today, here's what I worked on, these are the challenges, these are the mistakes I've made, things that can get really personal and really make you really vulnerable. And that's something that I'm really considering, just to try to help me kind of be more comfortable with that, you know. But that's the thing, Video Game Book Club, I haven't done it in years, so I haven't even really thought about it much in years. And then when you said it, it was just or like all coming back to me now. Like it's really funny.
I mean, I guess that, it is about that growth and development. You're probably my like in the late, I don't know, like maybe like 16th or 17th guest. Like we're getting close to 20 now. And
Nice.
sometimes I'll clip the interviews and post them on social media just to see if I can get some traction. And like the first five or six, I went back to see if I could clip them, and I was like, how I asked questions and my confidence
Yeah.
in the questions I asked then was like horrible. Talking to people then I'd be like,
So
like very, yeah.
yeah. No,
So it's like I
I
can't
totally
do
get it.
this.
It's
Um,
it's amazing. It's amazing how I think that's one thing I like about podcasting is it makes you a lot more comfortable having conversations. It makes you a lot more comfortable talking about yourself, which a lot of people are very uncomfortable with, and it makes you a better listener. You know, because it can be tough to you know, if you're not listening well, you're not going to be asking the good follow-up questions and the good, you're not going to have that banter back and forth that's so valuable and so great. So podcasting is weird like that. It does this thing, and then yeah, I find that you get good at it pretty quick. You know,
mm.
it's once you've done it for, yeah, I would say 15, 16 episodes, like you're probably hitting a pretty good stride right now. So that's great.
I mean, the
Definitely.
last few episodes have been some of my favorites, and like you said, it's really just because they feel more like conversations than
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, like the first few, like I said, I wasn't really confident in my questions, but yeah, my listening skills weren't there. So I wasn't asking any follow-up
Mm-hmm.
questions. But like let's say you were my first interview. Um, I would have asked you a question and you would have responded. I would have been go, okay. And I would have gone like to the next thing. So yeah, no, it's
Cool. Anyway,
definitely,
next question. Yeah.
yeah, anyways, next question.
It takes
Um,
practice. It
yeah.
takes practice. It does. And honestly getting back into it. I'm still practicing now. You know, like I got out of it for a long time, and I've done a few podcasts since book club, but um, it takes time, you know. And with book club, that was the thing where when we sort of started going into that more just kind of general conversation about video games, as opposed to we each play the game, and that only took a few episodes. It wasn't very long before we kind of tweaked that format, and I think it was a really good move. We started having guests on and things like that, and yeah, you find that you go back and listen to the episode 5 versus episode 30, and you can tell a huge difference in, you know, in the way that you as a host are performing, and the quality just of the questions and the conversation in general.
Yeah. Um, anyways, next question. No, I am actually going to the
Next
next
question.
question. So what levels of success did your podcast kind of achieve in outreach and engagement? And how do you think that the podcast helped you, you know, land any future roles or kind of help a Gearbox? I don't know if I have the times mixed up because your podcast says like I think 2013 to 2016, but I think you
Yeah.
started at Gearbox in 2014. So I don't know if you were doing the podcast a little bit or if you started at Gearbox, but I guess if you were already at Gearbox, how did the podcast gonna help you develop or grow there?
So so that's an interesting question, actually, for a couple of reasons. So to answer the question, like I said, it helped in the sense of kind of like when you're creating content and you're doing a thing, it makes you better at the thing, of course, but it also makes you more comfortable about the thing and about learning and about it. You know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So, I mean, probably the least eloquent thing I've ever said, but you know what I mean.
No.
So it's again just the idea of the podcast was just to do the thing and then build a community around it. And to be honest, I mean the we never hit like the new and noteworthy on Apple or anything like that. I mean, it was never not at all what I would call a successful podcast
Yeah.
by any measure, other than the fact that the objective that I had when I created it was again to make something to build a community around, and we did that, you know. And so that's all I wanted out of it. You know, there were like we did have a handful of listeners that were faithful listeners, would, you know, respond to us on Twitter and things like that, and that was really good. So, you know, that gave me the courage to create something and then go see what people thought about it, for one, which is a hugely important skill as a community manager. You know, not that you're the one person making the game in most cases, but it can be hard sometimes when you're working on a game and you go to the Discord or you go online and see people trashing it and they're upset. You know, it's not easy. I think I would just say, yeah, that, like, again, doing the thing and making it a practice on the daily, and not something that you're hypothetical about, you know, like, oh, I think this is what it would be like. Actually doing it is super crucial, and so that's probably the biggest value that we got out of that. Certainly more so than any like success or notoriety or anything like that.
Okay. Awesome. Um, I mean, when you talked about like responding to like comments and stuff online and kind of engaging with that feedback, um, especially with the studio, how is it kind of learning how to navigate like through negative feedback, like, oh, this looks like it sucks, or like this looks terrible, or nobody wants this. How's kind of getting through that, dealing with that as a community manager?
It can be tricky. It's a journey, right? Because I think community managers, I think we're kind of a sensitive bunch, you know, and so I think that it can be hard for us to divorce ourselves from the fact that it's not like what's being said is not a personal knock against us, you know. That's hard because you know, we work on these games and we work on these projects that we really love and we're passionate about, you know. And I mean, I learned a lot about that with Battleborn at Gearbox. I really loved that project and I really loved that team and that game. And, you know, it didn't do as well as any of us wanted it to. And so there was a lot of the funny thing is the community itself was always very passionate and positive about it for the most part. You know, I mean, there were times where something, you know, the change might be made that they didn't like and they'd get upset, but overall, we were always at a baseline positive place. You know, the external conversation in games was a lot more negative around it, and that does hurt a little bit. It's tough to go to work every day and put all your energy into this thing, and then someone not like it. But as a community manager and as a professional, you really do have to get good at divorcing yourself from that personal feeling that you feel a little bit hurt by that negative opinion, but it's not personal, and you don't need to take it personally, because taking it personally means that you're focusing too much on taking it personally and not on the professional avenue of, okay, acknowledging the feedback and then going through your process of saying, hey, okay, this person feels this way. Are there other people that feel the same way? Is this a problem that we need to address with the team, or is this just one person's opinion, and this doesn't have any bearing whatsoever on the actual product or on the community's overall experience? So those are really good skills that I think, trying to balance that innate sensitivity that most of the community managers that I know, at least to some degree, have. I feel like the community managers I know, either they are sensitive or they are just not at all, and it's just scorched earth, like they do not care, which is funny. But yeah, you have to separate the two and then be able to kind of say, all right, you don't like X, Y, and Z. What is it about X, Y, and Z that you don't like? What is it about these things that are diminishing the experience for you? Why are these things causing an issue? And then from there, yeah, it's a matter of figuring that out and saying, oh, wow, okay, so it sounds like there could be a legitimate problem. Maybe we just released an update where we touched weapon skins, and then people are now reporting, oh, hey, my gun is bleeding or something, just like crazy. Like, what's happening here? That could be something to tell the team about. We should look into that, right? So I've found many times that sometimes something, a comment or something might rub me the wrong way at first, and then when you dig into it a little bit, you're like, oh wow, I'm really glad that I dug into this with this person, just sort of stayed level on it, because it ended up being a legitimately valuable piece of feedback that was pretty huge. So
Do you ever find that there's like feedback, not even like there are comments that are just negative and really don't even offer anything of
oh,
value, and how do, like
1000%.
from and I'm not like pulling any shots out of Battleborn, but I'm
No,
just
no.
pulling this out as an example. From what I remember, Battleborn, that came out in 2017, correct, or around that time, um, and
2016, I think.
2016.
Because I'm pretty sure I joined the studio in person, moved here it was February of 2016, and I'm pretty sure Battleborn came out that May. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure.
And,
Anyway,
if maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but from what I remember, I think Battleborn was a hero shooter, or similar to that, and
right.
Overwatch just came out,
That's
and
exactly what happened. Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and I still see it now, like with Battleborn and Paladins,
Mm-hmm.
both of those, like, oh, this is just an Overwatch ripoff, and I'm even seeing it with Marvel Rivals now that
Mm-hmm.
just launched.
Mm-hmm.
People are even still saying that about Marvel Rivals. Like, how is it? Because with feedback, and I'm just using that as an example, right? Like, I'm not like calling Battleborn
Sure, sure.
a
Yeah, no,
ripoff.
no, no. Yeah.
Like, so to have people be like, well, your game's just a ripoff of this other game, or this just looks like a cruddier version of so and so. How do you even navigate through that? Because what can you do to fix that? That's my thought process.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm
The
not trying to like pull out any
No, no,
like
no, no, no. It's a great
negative
question. Listen, so the answer to this is actually very simple. What can you do about it? Nothing. Nothing.
nothing.
You can't change someone's opinion any more than you can make someone like you, any more than you can make someone do what you want them to do. You just can't do it, and even more so at the point where they think you might be trying to change their opinion, they're just going to dig into that opinion, right? Um, Psychology is a huge, huge part of community management, and knowing, excuse me, you have to kind of know going in. Again, don't take things personally. You can't change somebody's opinion. Once they've expressed it, they've expressed it. But as far as like how dealing with that personally with Battleborn, for me, it was sort of I feel like, I mean, like I said, it was tough to see those things, but the thing that I came back to every time was the team that I worked with, and I knew that the team that I had worked with was super passionate about what we had created. I knew that they had taken elements of other games that weren't Overwatch, that had nothing to do with Overwatch, because they were being developed, at the same time. So I defy anyone to tell me how our team could have ripped off Overwatch, in that moment, because that's not how game development works, right? Like every no one knows what
Yeah.
they're making until they show what they're making. But I knew that the team that I worked with every day was super passionate, and that they loved this game and what we were making and what we were putting out there for players, and the community itself loved it. And so I think it kind of gets back to just with any kind of negative opinion or negativity in general, I think you kind of have to go back to the positive and sort of say, okay, they don't like this, but I know a team of hundreds of people that I work with every day that loves this. I know a community of thousands of people that I work with every day that love this, and so whether they're just trolls or they're just being jerks or whatever, you have to recognize that stuff for what it is at the outset, and then just sort of say, okay, you get to the point, like, you said earlier, the amount of just sort of like just opinions, just negative, not valuable feedback, not offering solutions, just sort of, oh, the game sucks. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Community managers get really good at just tuning that out and knowing that. But there are, again, there are instances where something might seem like that on its face, and then you kind of, once you dig into it a little, you realize, oh no, there is something valuable here in terms of the feedback, and I should dig around here a little bit to see what it is, so. But changing people's opinions, never gonna happen.
Yeah. People are really strong about
Yeah.
how they feel about some things.
And
Um,
I would add really quick too that I've had, as I'm job hunting here, and we've talked, I got laid off from Tencent in May, so I'm one of the many tens of thousands of awesome professionals in the games industry that are currently looking for their next role. But I've had a few questions in interviews of sort of like that, like, how do you deal with negative comments? And it's a complicated question, because it's not like it depends on the context. It's not like you just sort of see a negative comment and take it for what it is and then deal with it. It's like, well, like I said earlier, did we release an update that touched some element that this person's talking about, and maybe a bug has been introduced? Or are there lots of other people that are talking about the same issue? And maybe this, it's never good to kind of just go into it and shut down the negativity, because that's legitimate feedback potentially. So you just have to you get good over time at just sort of recognizing the posts that don't have any value and the comments that don't really have value in terms of feedback value, and the ones that do. And
yeah.
I think that's kind of what it boils down to for me.
So it's just kind of it gets to a point of just like cutting through all the noise, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The old adage about community management is you're drinking from a fire hose. So you're not going to get every piece of feedback, every piece of information. You have to get as much as you can, and then with that information, you know, analyze it to the best of your ability, and then share what needs to be shared with your team. Then go back to the community with any details you can give them and say, hey, thanks for your feedback on this. We actually did find an issue here, and here's what we're doing to investigate it, and here's what we're doing to, hopefully fix it, and all that stuff. That's like ideal community to developer communication, in my opinion.
Moving on to our next question, though. So we've already talked a lot about Gearbox, but in 2014 you were hired as um a community. So you had in it on your LinkedIn it said community sponge. I just put community
Yeah, yeah,
associate
yeah,
slash
yeah,
sponge.
yeah.
Um, you know, how did it feel to start community management at such a large studio or such a known studio? But on top of that, and I'm just going to combine, I think, a few of my questions here. Um, with a studio that's made a game that you like so much, Borderlands, I mentioned you talked about the Loot Crate resume. I actually
Mm-hmm.
had a question about that, but
Okay.
you did the Loot Crate resume, you got into Gearbox. How was it starting at that studio and then being able to in just like a couple of years work on a franchise that you already really, really liked?
It was it was equal parts. It was kind of weird. It was weird for me because I on one hand I knew that this was unusual it's unusual for somebody with no experience whatsoever in video games to start at a AAA studio. It's like you just start playing baseball and all of a sudden the major leagues are like, hey, you want to like sit on the bench with us for a while? And you're like, yeah, okay. Um, so I think I knew innately that okay, I'm really fortunate here. I'm really lucky. This is a big opportunity that not a lot of people get, and I'm going to make the most of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I didn't really realize until I got into the industry and sort of learned, what the pipeline is like just overall for most people. How hey, a lot of people have to just start making their own games and doing their own thing, and then they get lucky and get a job at a AAA studio, or they start an indie studio, or everybody's pathway is sort of different, right? And yeah, but I did always feel from the very beginning, I knew that my pathway was really unique, and that I was really lucky to have had it work out the way that it did, because yeah, that does not happen for a lot of people, and so
Yeah.
it was really weird. And at first, even being in the Gearbox studio every day, I would walk by these big statues of the characters in the games that I was working on now and that I loved and everything. And there was a period of a few months there, or maybe not that long, but at least a month or two, where I was probably just kind of in my own head fanboying out a little bit and just, I can't believe I'm here, this is crazy,
Yeah.
but then I quickly realized, okay, we're not here to fanboy out, we're here to do a job. Like, you're here because you belong here, so focus up and do the job. And then I did, and it was no big deal. After that, it was all just kind of part of the madness. But it was weird, and a very unusual, weird in a good way, and very unusual entry method into the industry, that again, I'm really really grateful for.
You mentioned like that fanboying out thing, like, oh, I'm here. Like, I feel like maybe it's just me, but could you ever like not do that though? Like, I don't know if that was phrased correctly. I mean, you're
Yeah.
seeing these people making games that you love, and properties that you love, and then you get to show that to people. I mean, is it hard not to, like you said, fanboy out or whatever?
I guess the key is like harnessing the fanboy, right?
Yeah.
Because truly that's one reason they wanted me in the first place. That's my enthusiasm is literally what got me in the door, right? So it would have been foolish for me to completely bury that and say, okay, I am now community manager robot. I don't care, like, um, but I think, yeah, it's harnessing it, right? Like, I'm sure there were plenty of times where I would sort of stop for a moment and look around and kind of think, man, I cannot believe I'm here. I cannot believe I pulled this off. I can't believe this worked out. Like, this is crazy. Wow. But it was never like in a distracting way. It was never like I'm sort of busy staring at the wall and kind of taking it all in while everybody else is like, hey man, get over here. We need your help. There's never anything like that. It was just sort of knowing, being able to appreciate it for what it is, and then say, okay, cool. What's next? Back to work. That was, yeah, that was just kind of always the attitude, I think.
Cool. So, during your time at Gearbox, you shipped 13 titles, worked as an influencer manager, community coordinator, and a few other roles. How did your skill set grow and develop when you left Gearbox in 2020? And how would you compare your confidence in your abilities from when you started to when you had like walked out,
Oh man, it
and said
was
goodbye?
oh, it was an astronomical difference.
Yeah.
I mean literally, I would be, if it weren't for the fact that everybody starts somewhere, and everybody, we all at one point started and we didn't know what we were doing, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know. um I knew what I was getting myself into just because I'd been on the forums for a long time, the Gearbox forums, and that was really when I was contracting, that was the big part of my focus. So that made it easy to just sort of transition right into that part of the role. Like, that was no big deal. That was super fluid. It was just then knowing how far the community spreads, and how much, and how all of that spread needs some level of attention. We need to know about all of the things that are happening, if at all possible. Um, yeah, I think that was kind of the main thing there. I enjoy talking about it just because it
Mhm.
was it was so weird, just like
No.
just such a strange way to begin a career. Just
Mhm. Well,
yeah.
the last manager I interviewed was a gentleman named Logan Robb. I don't know if you know him, but he's at Saber Interactive,
Hmm.
and he said the way that he got into the games industry was he was a doorman at like a bar or like a pub. Um, and then one day like a recruiter came in and he just got talking to him about like video games.
Yeah.
And then he's like you should apply. And he's
Yeah.
like okay, and that's how he
Yeah.
got in. So I mean,
I,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I feel like, and it all just gets back to the sad state of our industry right now, just with layoffs and everything. But I feel like, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but I feel like cool stories like that, and I like to think my story is kind of cool too. But I feel like cool stories are fewer and further between now. I feel like we're in a spot right now where there's just everybody is competing and vying for the same few roles in the industry, and just like I said earlier, there's so many talented people out there. It's crazy right now, and companies have their pick. They have the pick of the litter, and I feel like these days just sort of like sending a thing in the mail physically is out of the question. Like I don't think I could do what I did then now. It wouldn't be feasible, and it wouldn't have the impact. It just wouldn't work. And I think that's really cool. I love that he's just sort of there working the door at the bar. Somebody walks by, you get talking, and I think that's a big community manager thing. You find yourself in these situations where you're just talking to people, and then one thing leads to another. And I can't help but wonder if there's some sort of DNA level thing that we have that just sort of allows us to put ourselves in those situations. And then for some of us, it kind of flourishes and grows into, oh, you like to talk to people? Oh, now you're a community manager in video games.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
surprise. Years later, you kind of look back and realize, oh, weird, yeah.
Um, what was I gonna say? I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to do community man, so I kind of had like a weird way to get decide that I wanted to do it. I've always loved games and whatnot, and I am a comms major in college, and I really only picked comms because I was originally going to join, and this is like really cheesy, I think. I was originally going to join the military, but I started dating my girlfriend, now fiance, and I was like, I guess I can't date. I mean, I guess I can't join the military, um, because
Oh
then I'll
man,
like
she
go off.
just
Um,
garbage, just your dreams
yeah,
straight in the garbage.
uh,
Unbelievable.
no. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to college.
Yeah,
And
whatever.
I was like, I guess I'll go to community college. So at the time, I think I wanted to work in like local news as, kind of like a production assistant or something like that. So I pretty much just, I really didn't put any thought into it. And it's kind of embarrassing. So I just Googled like, what degree do I need to do like this
I
job?
want to be on the news.
Yeah. Well,
How to get on news?
well, I didn't want to be like a news anchor, just like the camera
Yeah,
guy or something. And
yeah,
and they're like one of the first things is like communications. I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna
makes
do, I
sense.
guess. Um, so I started doing communications, and at some point, I was like, I don't really think I'm passionate about local TV
Yeah,
news.
I just
Um,
realized I don't care about this place.
yeah, but I do like video games, and I've always loved video games, and I want to do video games. And I was like, well, I can't make a game. I don't know how to code. I'm not a good artist.
Yeah,
I've never tried narrative. I'm not a level designer. So I was like, well, what the hell can I do to work in games?
you're like, oh,
Um,
community. Yeah, okay,
and I
fine.
finally figured, I finally found I was like, I can do community. And from what I've seen, a few other community managers have worked in or have majored in comms or maybe marketing or business or something. And I have a few professors that say like, well, comms majors just love to talk. Like that's all they do
Yeah,
in
yeah.
classes, they talk. And I'm seeing that, I feel like that sentiment holds true with
I
community
agree completely.
managers. Um, they've been my favorite conversations.
Yeah.
The community managers I've had on here, and I've only had a few, but they've been like the best ones so far. And that's not to put anybody else down that isn't a community
Oh yeah.
manager, but when I'm talking to somebody
Just
about
we're
like,
cooler.
yeah,
Community is cooler. It just is what it is.
well, when I'm talking to somebody about like programming or like level design, that's great. And I'm sure if I were like a programmer or a level
Yeah.
designer, there'd be a lot more to connect with. But
Yeah, you
I
probably
feel
have
like,
listeners that resonates with them quite a
yeah,
bit. The funny thing too for me is when I got the job at Gearbox, like as I'm sort of working the contract gig, and I'm still kind of trying to figure out what, like what comes next, because it's not a lot of money, and I'm trying, we're still having, my wife and I are still trying to figure out kind of what's going on, right? Like where do we go from here? And at one point, funny enough, I enrolled in a college, a local college there in the Middle Tennessee area for PR. I
Yeah.
enrolled, I paid for it, and like the deal was done. All I had to do was kind of find some time to go buy the books and do that stuff, and then go to class. And I got the full time job at Gearbox. So then I had to go to the college and say, "Hey, I know I just paid you all this money, uh, but I've
I get
decided
it back.
I'm gonna drop out of college again before I ever go back." Right? And luckily they were so cool about it. They were like, "Yeah, that's fine, whatever. Just cancel the payment. It's okay." Really,
That's
that's
funny.
it? No fees or anything? No, no, you're good. All right, cool. So yeah, would based on that, I would have to agree with you.
Yeah.
There are some strong correlations there for sure.
So moving forward here, you talked about GameStop a little bit. I don't know, like 20 minutes ago in the interview. But you worked for them from 2019 to 2022, and you just pretty much did social campaigns. And your LinkedIn said you managed like hundreds of their social campaigns for games and
Yeah,
whatnot. Um,
yeah.
are there, and I know that this is a lot to pick from, but do you have any campaigns that you really liked working on more so than
Yeah,
others, or like what are some of your
absolutely.
favorite moments in
So
that?
some of those campaigns were, and that was over the whole time I was there, right? So some of those campaigns were a lot more involved than others. Some were pretty simple, and it was just, hey, we need to put together a very small campaign, few social posts for this or for that. One that always sticks out to me though that I really enjoyed working on was it 2018? No, no, it would have been 2020, 2019. 2019, that Call of Duty Modern Warfare, when they started calling them Modern Warfare again, and everybody was
Yeah.
kind of thinking, are we going to do this again? Huh? Okay, cool. Um, that was a really fun campaign because we worked really closely with some of the reps from Activision. They were in our office, here and there. We were meeting with them in person, getting to know them. They were really cool. And it was, for considering it was such a huge franchise and such a huge deal, they were surprisingly very cool about the ideas that we had for social, the things that we wanted to do, and it was very much just a really fluid and easy partnership. It was really cool. So I think if I had to choose one, just off the top of my head, that would probably be it. Just because it was really, it was a big game. It was lots of expectation, lots of fun planning, and then part of our team, the marketing team there at GameStop, they did an awesome job putting together live in store like midnight release events, which I think before that had sort of fallen out of favor as digital downloads were sort of becoming more prevalent. I think that people were, and the stores too, maybe to some degree, but people for sure were backing off of those midnight releases and they weren't really doing anything. So I think a lot of stores in the company had stopped doing them just because they felt like they were a waste of time. And then with Modern Warfare, we brought those back. We
Yeah.
brought those back to some, especially a flagship location that we have here in Dallas, in the Dallas area. We had a big event and it was really cool. And so my thing for that was I want us to do this big event at the store and then cover it really closely for social. So there's like Instagram stories. At the time you didn't have, you know, um, YouTube Shorts. TikTok was there. It was just kind of coming around, but the main vertical format was Instagram Stories. And so I remember walking around the store that night, getting all kinds of great shots, videos, putting all that on social. It did really great, and it was a lot of fun. So I would say that's probably one that sticks out to me as a campaign that I really enjoyed working on there.
Yeah. Those midnight releases, like I feel like I missed them because
Yeah.
like you said, like digital buying like buying something digital
Yep.
is a lot more common. And uh you know, growing up, I it was a lot more prevalent when I was growing up, like middle school, elementary school. That's when midnight releases were a thing, and obviously my parents wouldn't let me go to that, or I was too young or
Elementary
whatever.
school rolling up to GameStop. Elementary
Yeah,
school kid.
yeah,
Pick you
like
up in an hour.
um, I remember when Modern Warfare. 3 came out in like 2011. Um, I remember watching people like line up outside of like a GameStop at like 7 o'clock. Um,
Yeah.
and like I said, like I never really got the chance to experience those. I've gone to one midnight release for Spider-Man 2, which was like last
Yeah.
year, and that was it. So sometimes I'll go on YouTube and I'll just watch videos of like midnight releases for like Halo or
Yeah.
like there's one that I'll always watch for the PlayStation 2, like people lining up outside of a GameStop for
Experiences you missed.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah
I'm kind of the same way, but with games that I'm not good at. Like there's a walkthrough series for Bloodborne that I really love to go back and watch every
yeah
so often because this guy's just so good at the game. But then he's also great at talking through the game, and he knows all about the lore and all this stuff. So it's really, really great experience for Bloodborne fans. I think the guy's name was Epic Name Bro, and he
okay.
had like a really great series about Bloodborne that I'll go back every so often and just watch it because I love Bloodborne. I love that world, but I'm so bad at the game that I eventually just got to this one point where
I
okay,
can't I
this is
can't
this
do it
is it.
anymore.
You know, sorry FromSoft. This is the limit of my ability to to play your game. You know, just didn't work out. Didn't work out. But yeah, I get that. I get that. Finding videos on YouTube that sort of give you experiences that
Encapsulate,
you
yeah.
missed or aren't capable of. For in my case.
Moving forward, so what are, in your opinion, some of the most important aspects of running a social media campaign for a game?
I think I think one of the most important is sort of understanding the campaign. So let's take that for example, kind of understanding modern warfare, what it is, what we're what the objective is for promoting it. Most importantly, who the audience is, right? And then from there, um, crafting content that is going to resonate with that audience. The thing I always like to try to stick with is educate, entertain, and engage. I want the posts I'm creating to do at least one of those things. So educate could be something like a tips and tricks post, like, oh hey, Modern Warfare is coming soon. Ever wonder what the MP5 in Modern Warfare is going to be like? Here's a video showing you. So you're educating people there, or you're giving them tips on how to play. After the game's out, or it could be something as simple as this isn't Modern Warfare related, but one time for Mario Day when I was at GameStop, I on Twitter. So on Twitter, at least at the time, you would click on an image and it would show you the image in the middle of your phone. If you have your phone vertical, it shows you a landscape image in the middle, and then you have all that empty space on the top and the bottom, right, of your screen. And I figured out a way to create an image of Mario where you could tap on the image on Twitter and then sort of move Mario up and down on your screen like this, kind of make him jump. So like
Okay.
you're interacting with that asset, right? Which I thought was really cool. Uh, and you can do that with anything. You sort of just it's about sort of figuring out, hey, who's the audience? What are some fun things we can do? And then how can we, that's a good good example of engaging and entertaining. I think you could argue. So, how can we engage, entertain, and or educate this audience, and and then from there, it's the fun part of just coming up with the ideas and seeing what works. That's obviously social strategy and like a very, truncated and abbreviated explanation, but
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the most important aspect is just sort of figuring out who your audience is, and then kind of how can you keep them around, right? And I think one of the good ways to do that is again with that content, that type of content that educates, engages, entertains. You stand a really good reason to catch somebody's attention, and then if you're adding value to their life and to their timeline,
Mhm.
they're at least somewhat more likely to stick around and to pay attention to the content and interact with it. So and that's
Yeah.
that's what you want, right? In social, every engagement's a win, you know
Yeah.
so that's why
Everything.
that's why my advice is always, if you're the type of person that gets on social media, not you, of course, I'm just saying just generally out there, if you're the type of person that gets on social media and you get spun up about a thing that makes you mad, and then I have to comment on this. Well, you've already lost. And the
Yeah.
person that posted that won because they want that engagement, because somebody like me running the GameStop accounts, like I would post something, that I thought was funny, or that, our team thought was funny, and we would post it, and then someone might come back with a negative opinion. And kind of like we're talking about earlier, that role, it was really hard to separate the personal from the, the business side of it, because it's literally posts that we're creating. Like I'm
Yeah.
making these things and then I put them out there, and sometimes people would love them and sometimes people would hate them. And so, but even when they hated them, if they liked it or they commented and they're being a jerk, I win. So that's
Yeah.
just how I kind of tried to look at that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, in like a I do these interviews on YouTube, but on Instagram and TikTok, I'll post some clips of these interviews sometimes, but I'll also make, like just fun little like memes or edits of games I've been playing or whatever.
Sure.
And I just made this Marvel Rivals meme, and oh my God, these people in the comments have been arguing like, and it's been up for weeks. These people have been arguing in the comments for weeks, back and forth about like
Yeah.
if it's better than Overwatch or not. And I've just been kind of letting them argue in the
Let them
corner.
go. Yeah.
But I've had it's like 70, 80 replies between both of them.
Yeah.
And it only
And
helps me.
we could man, listen, we could do a whole separate episode about brand social and how, um, for better or worse, okay, fellow brand social people out there, I'm saying here now, for better or worse, I'm not saying it's a good thing to do these types of things, but for better or worse, how you can use that to, you know, win that battle of engagement, right? And then ultimately, you're like, those of us that are plugged into social media understand that, and that's a pretty easy concept, right? But when you're having to explain to leadership, people that think more in terms of dollars and cents and bottom lines and things like that, why posting a meme with no link to buy the product or whatever, why that's a good idea and why that will work in the long term, that's trickier, And so, it's just, again, it's just about, it all comes back to building community. If you're built, we used to say at GameStop, if you're building community and you're having fun with people on social, whether we post a link or not, they're gonna end up buying something from us at some point, but they're gonna assume it was their idea, you know, rather than the fact that we created this ecosystem and these social channels that are entertaining them and adding value to their life and to their timeline, and that at some point they remembered at some point, oh, I want to buy a thing, oh, I'll go to GameStop. That was always sort of our approach: is let's just have fun, and then trust that, when it all comes out in the wash, we will have done well. And we did. Like, I mean, it worked, so.
Moving on a little bit. I'm not trying to rush. I just know you
No,
gotta
no, not at all.
head out
Yeah.
pretty soon. Um, from 2022, and you mentioned this earlier, from 2022 to 24, like earlier this year, 24, you worked as a community manager for Tencent Games. You were a senior community manager, I believe you said.
Mhm.
Um, and you said that you left in May. Um, was it May that you
Yeah.
left? You said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, After that, you started your own business, Joe King Consulting, where you kind of consult indie studios or smaller studios
Mhm.
about social media management and community management and stuff like that. Um, what made you decide to kind of start that business or go that route a little bit? I think you talked about it at the very beginning of the
Yeah,
interview, but
before we started recording, I talked a little bit about it. I think the goal with not just the consulting business, but just a lot of the other things that I'm working on too. My current podcast, I've got a current podcast, Game Industry Job Hunt, where I'm basically chronicling my game industry job hunt in the form of a podcast. Yeah, so with the consulting and the podcast I'm doing and all of that stuff, it's really about future proofing myself. To be honest, to be completely transparent and honest with you, it's about future proofing, myself and my family. The industry is a wreck right now. The games industry is a wreck right now, and I think I think the vast majority of people out there that would hear this, probably, if they know the games industry and they're in it, they would probably agree. And so, not long at all after I was laid off in May, I talked to my wife and said, "Hey, look, I think part of the next step for us is figuring out, how what we can do to sort of bet on me and bet on us and our family and create, allow me to create things that are gonna help us going forward, so that we at least minimize the impact of any future layoffs or things like that. The ultimate goal, honestly, being to not have to worry about that, and say, oh well, the consulting, for example, has worked out and I'm able to do that full time. And now we don't have to worry about having a layoff in the future or whatever. Right. So that's kind of the ultimate goal there, just diversifying what I'm doing and what I'm working on. But still at the same time, I'm very interested and excited, in getting back with a team full time and having a full time role. It's just that, this layoff in May really woke me up to, facts that I already knew about the need for diversifying income and just making sure that we don't have all the eggs in one basket, honestly.
Um, so since starting your business in June, the consulting, have you helped, or how have you seen, sorry, I'm going to restart that. How have
You're
you
good.
helped indie, and smaller game studios expand their social media efforts?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to focus on doing that through really solid engagement strategies and tactics. Personally, my philosophy is everything comes back to engagement. And so if you have a solid engagement strategy for your game or for your studio or your publisher or whatever, um, I think that's really what is going to show you the revenue you want to see later down the road. So that's obviously a very broad way of describing everything that I'm doing there, but it's really trying to come in and sort of help show clients, look, there are lots of cool things you can do here. There are cool tools you can use. You can do giveaways and things like that that will help you grow all your different channels at the same time and really build the community up, rather than just making everything super reactive, just focusing on social media or just focusing on one thing or the other. It's kind of teaching them how to diversify, honestly, um, the community and social side of what they're doing, and optimize it so that they're really getting the most out of it, basically.
Okay. Um, so last question here about pretty much your experiences and community management and stuff. Um, what advice can you give to upcoming community and social media managers, people that just want to enter the industry in general?
The first advice is, like I said earlier, would be to do the thing. But I feel like in the years that I've been in the industry, that is not as relevant for community and social folks, because like everyone is already doing the thing. We're all on social media. Um, I think my advice would be to follow voices in community and social media and brand social, not just in games, like brand social in general. There are some really brilliant people out there that have a lot of really good things to say that I know I'm learning a ton from. And that would be a big thing for me, is making sure that you understand the difference between just having social accounts, having an Instagram account, and then being able to run an Instagram account for a brand, and learning the ins and outs of sort of what's required there, and what you would need to be able to do in order to make that work. Um, that's a big one. And then also sort of understanding the tools available at that are available to you, and how to use them. Things like Sprout and Buffer and Hootsuite. Things that are like publishers scheduling tools, things like that. That's even one in the beginning of my career. I didn't really understand how to use those or what the value was or anything. And so I went for a little bit there at the beginning at Gearbox, just not working efficiently at all when it comes to social, just because I didn't know. I didn't know any better. I had like a Google sheet, and that was kind of it. And then I would copy paste. And now looking back on it, I'm like, oh God, like how much time did I waste, just doing it that way. So yeah, that would be another thing too, just understanding the tools at your disposal and what they do, and what the differences are and things like that. Just learning everything that you can, I think, is the best thing you can do, because then when the opportunity comes up, number one, you'll recognize it, and number two, you'll be able to, speak confidently to your skills and the things that you've learned and the things that you know.
Mm. All right. Um, well, that was all the questions I had related to community management and your experiences. Moving on, I've just got a couple other things, kind of
Sure,
more
sure.
fun stuff. So usually I do rankings. I'll usually do a blind ranking, but the game awards are today.
Oh yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah,
Wow, the
I'm
timing
going.
here.
And I actually did this with the last gentleman I interviewed too. So it's going to be two interviews in a row where I've got these same sets of questions, but it's okay because I like it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to have you rank the Game of the Year award, like the Game of the Year award nominees from worst to best.
That is not a good idea for me. That listen, this is a little embarrassing, but I have to tell you, I haven't played. I don't think I've played any of them. I've
Really?
seen no, I've seen a lot of only because I'm one of those gamers that when I find something I like, I stick to it. I
Okay.
really love. This will probably come as no surprise, but I really love looter shooters, and so usually I am bouncing back and forth between some mixture of like right now I'm just super into Fallout 76, but I will usually complete whatever battle pass is happening there, and then I'll jump back over to Destiny 2 and I'll play that for a little bit, and then I might play. I love going back to older games like Ghost Recon Wildlands. I revisited that recently. Really love that. Um, so so some of the newer stuff, especially the indie stuff, takes a little longer to get into my play cycle. But I have heard go through the nominees. Go ahead, because I have heard some great conversation about a couple of them in particular.
So there's Metaphor Re Fantasio, Black Myth Wukong, Shadow of the Erd Tree,
Yeah,
Astrobot, Final Fantasy
Astrobot. Yeah,
Rebirth, and then Balatro.
yeah.
None
So
of which are looter shooters.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I play other stuff too, but it's just I have, like I told you at the beginning, I have a 4-year-old son, so
Yeah.
between just life, I I am really lucky to get a little bit of game time at night before I then just plug in to do more work or just do other things. But I have heard a ton of really good things about Astrobot, and that one in particular is one that I am actually very excited to try out and plan to try out with my son. He's kind
Yeah.
of getting to the age now where I'm sort of we're exposing him to video games a little bit, but he's not really into it yet. It
Okay.
hasn't really clicked where he thinks, oh wow, this is really cool. I want to play. I want to play. So Astrobot is one that I'm actually really excited to try out. But yeah,
Okay.
hopefully I don't look like a complete toolbox
No,
here
you
because
won't
I haven't played any of the.
because
But in fairness, now I have also not publicly commented on any of them either. So
no,
I
you
have that
you won't
going
look
for
like
me.
a toolbox. I don't have like the people that do watch my videos aren't gonna be like
They're probably not
this
going to
this
care.
guy, nobody's gonna care.
I'm a really nice guy. Otherwise, I am. I mean, honestly.
I've only played two of them. No, I've
Yeah,
played three of them. I haven't beaten any of them. I've played Shadow of the Erd Tree, Astrobot, and Balatro. And that's
yeah.
it. I mean,
And Shadow of the Erd Tree, I would love to try because again, I love FromSoft. I'm just not good at FromSoft games. That's
that
the thing.
one's
So
and that's hard. Shadow of the
yeah.
Erd Tree is like hard.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah, because I'm a college student and I work part time and then
Hmm.
I've got college full time. So I haven't beaten a game since I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know the last
I
time I
don't
beat a
either. I
game.
really don't. I
Um,
really don't.
I'd love to have more time to play, and I'm sure I will soon. But this fall has been really busy.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we'll just get your general.
Yeah.
Well that's fine. So you don't have to rank them, but how about this? Do you have any Game of the Year award predictions? Maybe like from trailers that you think will come out, or who you think will win what category?
um, that's a good question. Now I do know there is a Borderlands 4 trailer tonight, so I'm of course excited about that. I'll be really excited to see that. Ever since I left Gearbox, I've loved seeing kind of what they do and the directions that they go with everything. So that's gonna be fun. I don't know if I have any juicy predictions or anything like that, and I've never
No.
been good at predictions of any kind. But I will say, yeah, I am excited about the Borderlands 3 trailer or 4 trailer. I am excited about Astrobot again to see how it
Yeah.
does, and then just any of the games that I have played in the past year, just seeing kind of what happens. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm really bad at like game awards commentary. So
No, you're fine.
it's a thing. I don't know.
It's typically not.
I have to just own it.
I typically don't do Game Awards commentary. I just happen since it's tonight.
No, I get it.
But
It's a good idea. I just
so, well,
yeah
this will come out not this week, but next week. Hopefully, this
yeah.
interview. So by then the Borderlands 4 trailer will probably
We'll
be
know,
released,
and
and
we'll
we'll
know
know
who's
how it
game of the
looks.
year.
Yeah.
We'll know everything. Yeah.
Um.
So hello in the future.
Hello. I forgot to ask. And this is something I ask everybody. What's your favorite game of all time?
Um, I think my favorite game of all time would have to be Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
But the original Zelda also is up there because that's I can vividly remember that's the first game where I ever lost sleep over it. Like as a
really,
kid, and yeah, the a friend up the street had a Nintendo and they had Zelda, and I remember just instantly just being obsessed, and I think that is where my love for looter shooters eventually came from. Just just collecting things and always having something to kind of work toward, and so I can remember this one night just laying in bed not being able to sleep because I was thinking about those jumping spider, I forget what they're called, but there's that one level where you're walking under the cliff and then it'll kind of jump, a couple of them jump down on you and you have to avoid them, and then I think right after that there was some kind of a item I was after or something, and yeah, I just got totally obsessed with that and it was fun. So the Zelda franchise in general is big for me, but especially the original and especially Ocarina.
yeah.
Definitely those two.
Okay. Well, that's it for the most part. Just my final question, before we head out is, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I've got a podcast currently that I just launched not that long ago called Game Industry Job Hunt. And that's basically where I am interviewing recruiters and industry voices, just anybody that sort of has a insights into the hiring side of the industry, and just kind of learning whatever I can from them, and then passing that on to everybody in podcast form. So that's been a lot of fun. And then yeah, just if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, that'd be great.
Awesome.
I'm always game to connect and meet new people. So
I'll like throw up a picture of
send a request my way. Yeah.
I'll throw up a picture of the podcast and your LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, cool. That'd be great.
But,
But yeah, that's it.
yeah. Thanks so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on, Joe. I really appreciate it. I hope
Yeah,
you have a good
anytime.
one.
Anytime. Yeah,
All
you
right.
too, Connor. Thanks a lot.